Today we are talking about one of the biggest issues ever to hit esports. This is a issue that resulted in the loss of over 70 jobs overnight, as well as potentially the collapse of North America's biggest esports league. So this is definitely something we want to get into. My name's Devin Nash, formerly CEO of Riot Gaming, and getting right into this, we're jumping this. This is about the North American League of Legends Championship Series. Now, League of Legends is a game played by millions across North America as well as worldwide. A MOBA featuring a championship series where 10 teams compete with 5 players each in seasons for victory. Now, those teams are required by Riot Games, the publisher of North America LCS, to field what's called the NACL, a North American Challenger League, which is also publicly broadcasted. And the Challenger League, in theory, is kind of a funnel, starting with like collegiate and amateur, where similar to sports, you kind of find good potential players. You ideally they kind of get on an official team, and they are going to like play up, and they're going to become a pro one day in the actual LCS. So this is similar to sports. The funnel is kind of like designed to be the same. Now we'll find out in this video if this is something that is actually true, but what this concerns is basically this. So teams have been asking Riot to drop the NACL requirement. That is like basically the entire league. Like, hey, don't make us have teams. We think it's too expensive. We don't want to have this requirement to field a challenger team if we don't want to. Like, if we can find our players from other places, then we should be able to do it. Well, okay, so Riot said, hey, great. Well, that sounds fine. We'll do that. You don't need to have any kind of participation mandatorily in the NACL anymore. Now, they did this as of the time of this recording about 2 weeks ago, or basically about 2 weeks before the actual new season of League of Legends competitive starts. So this is a very, very early warning. Like, all these people thought they had their jobs, and basically simultaneously, 7 out of 10 of the teams drop their NACL teams. Completely. So all the coaches, 5 players, all the support staff, they're just gone. Basically, 7 out of 10 said, great. Well, Riot waived a week before the league starts, Riot waived the requirement. I mean, this is like, if you can imagine, this is like everyone's getting set up for media. They're getting new jerseys. They're getting like set up for like photos. They think that like they're going to be playing for the next like 6 months. And Riot just says, sure, all right, we'll just drop the mandatory participation. And all the teams are like, great, well, we're out. So led by the play, so of course the players are pretty upset about this, right? Not especially the challenger players, but the LCS players as well. So led by the Players Association, we're going to call that the PA in this video. Players decided to stage a walkout to oppose the dissolution of the academy teams and other things, which we're going to get into in this video. So the North American Challenger League is also called the Academy, like North American Academy. So okay, so like, they're walking out and they're saying, hey, we're going to put some pressure on Riot because we are not okay with like this level of communication. We're not okay with like you guys just doing this without ever even consulting us. Now, notably, the last point of that chronology, because you're probably just trying to figure out what's going on right now, is Riot said, okay, well, we're going to force team owners anyway to field their rosters. Now, I said who created the problem. I'll get to that later. Okay, so the first thing to understand here is that this is a walkout. Okay, so a walkout is a legal demonstration by employees just denying labor. You say, look, about something unfair in the workplace. I'm not okay with this. I'm not okay with this happening. We're not okay with like you guys just saying that half the league can be gone right a week before it. We are not going to play. Now, notably, it's obviously the challenger players are already gone. So it's the LCS players, it's the actual pros who got together with the Players Association, which is a group of people led by Philip Aram and a player representative named Darshan, who have basically said, okay, we are like going to represent all the players here. We're going to take a vote, and everyone is going to agree to walk out. There's not going to be any professional LCS players on the broadcast, which is coming up in a few days. And Riot, you've got to figure that out. Riot says, sure, okay, team owners, you got to figure that out because this is your problem, right? You got to fulfill your contractual obligations, and here is where this problem is. So the walkout is intended to be pressure for Riot to communicate with the PA. And Riot is forcing the teams to play anyway, which is crazy, right? So there's a lot to get into here. But one of the things that you need to know before getting into this is that we're kind of essentially in a race to the bottom where right now, I mean, it's either going to come down to somebody breaking, right? Like either Riot is going to capitulate or the players capitulate and come back and play, or there's going to be something happening at the negotiation table, which is like happening right now as the time of this recording. So let's go through the demands so that you understand kind of like what's actually happening here with and what they're asking for and what this is really about, because I've seen a lot of like misunderstanding of that. So this is the LCS Players Association that what we call the PA, and they've got some requests. Okay, so this is basically the response to Riot dropping the NACL. Now, I think a lot of people don't understand that the Academy League is already gone. So the North American Challenger League, as it existed before, just doesn't exist anymore. It's not. They're not asking for it to come back. I think what the PA really wants is they want a seat at the table. The players want to feel like they're being communicated with, or actually are being communicated with, which has not been historically the case with Riot. So they're asking for a couple of things, and we'll go through each one of them. And kind of what's going on here. So the first thing they're asking for here is to institute Valorant-style promotion and relegation between the LCS and NACL. So what does this mean? That means that they want... so a lot of people think that means that they want to undo franchising. That's not true, probably. There's no way that Riot would ever do that. All of these 10 teams... some years ago, they paid anywhere between 10 to 12 million, 12 to 15 million dollars, including my team, CLG. We paid it to get into the franchise, and now CLG doesn't exist there anymore. But most of those other teams do for now, until they might leave. Then I try to get out. And so the PA knows that franchising is here to stay. I think what they're asking for is 2 additional slots to be added for non-franchise teams to be able to promote or relegate out of the league. Basically, you have a option to promote into the LCS if you are good enough, and similarly, the bottom 2 slots, the whoever's the worst of those teams, go out. So I'm not exactly sure how they want that to work, but there's no way this will ever happen. The problem with the Academy League is that there's just so little traction and viewership on... They do broadcast it publicly on Twitch, but there's so little traction compared to the LCS, which is already declining in North America, that I just don't see this ever happening. And furthermore, with just I think something to understand about this is that the reason why the franchising existed was really for investors. It was so teams could go to investors and say, I have a guaranteed spot here, and so you should give me tens of millions of dollars because we're going to generate value over the course of 5-10 years. So Riot, also, by the way, this also is relevant to sponsorships. If you do a 2 to 3 to 4 or 5 year contract with a sponsor, you want to be sure that team is still going to be there. In a relegation style environment, Riot loses the option to be able to do sponsorships like that, and so do the teams. So I just don't see a promotion or relegation system like Valorant has ever been realistic, and I don't think that this is a request that the PA is going to be able to fulfill. Now, notably, I don't think they have to fulfill all of these. These are going to be pretty extreme requests that they're probably not expecting that Riot acquiesces for everybody. I think that they're just wanting to see at the table, which is fine. We'll keep going. So Riot needs to commit to a revenue pool of player salaries of $300,000 per NACL team per year. So they're asking for... So notably, there's a really important thing here, and I've seen this number thrown around, is that the LCS gives players... the LCS gives each team $3 million per year. Now that's not actually true. What's actually true is the LCS, so we'll just do Riot Games, gives each LCS team a stipend dependent on the revenue that the league actually makes. So that's sponsorships or ticket sales or merch or all kinds of things. Okay, and that number, according to reporting by Travis Gafford, which is a insider in the kind of the esports community, is between $1.5 million and $3 million. So each team is getting, and I can confirm, obviously I know the number, and I can confirm that's a good range. So $1.5 million to $3 million is reportedly what Riot is giving each LCS team. And Riot, and basically what the PA is saying is, hey, let's say that's $3 million, right? We'll take 10% of that and give it to the NACL. So basically, Riot in the past has just given that money out, and they've said, okay, do whatever you want with it. Just make sure you stay afloat. And the teams can't even do that, by the way. But they said fine. What the PA is asking for here is they're saying give $300K of that, or 10%, allocated only to the North American Challenger League. Bring back the North American Challenger League. Only allocate that $300K to that. Okay. So I have a couple of comments here for what it's worth. Like the Players Association could have made this move a long time ago. They're obviously doing this as a sense of urgency. It's a little hard for me to understand why they didn't do this. Like to understand a little bit about the Academy League. The Academy League, when I ran an Academy team, which at the time was CLG's Academy team, many of our great players came up through that, particularly like Huhi or Stixay. We had great players come up through Challenger. But I'm worried now today, like that was years ago, right? We sold CLG at 2019. So we're kind of 3 or 4 years. And like now that it's sort of a requirement, not all of the players on Academy teams are really competitive, and they're not like really trying to grow and be a part of the LCS. Some of them are kind of just collecting a paycheck. Others are friends of owners, and they're just kind of put on the teams so they can kind of just be there. And there's been a lot of criticism by like notable influencers like I Will Dominate or like Tyler One on this issue, and I kind of agree with it. I do think the Academy was like not ideal as of 2023. As what it was intended to be, like we talked about earlier, which is like a funnel to drive people into the NALCS, and so it's like kind of concerning to me then that the PA didn't move on this earlier if they truly believe that the ecosystem needed this, because the system was kind of broken from the beginning. The NACL, the PA justifies this claim by Philip Aram on a podcast said that 17% of each team's average LCS salary is represented in the entire championship team that they own. So I still think that 17% is actually quite high for something that provides literally zero return. So there is I would be really surprised if any team owner could justify to me how a single dollar of revenue is made through the North American Challenger League that they have to run. So like none of their sponsorships are really applying to it because there's no viewership. None of these individual players are like really building a brand, have a brand, or are like using their brand. So it's just very, very minimal. So they're essentially asking for a 300K requirement for provide no value in return for the team. So I just don't think that's going to happen. Yeah, so let's keep going. Allow LCS orgs to partner with affiliates for cost sharing. I read this basically just like LCS teams can get sponsors. I don't see a problem with that. I don't even think there's anything to talk about there. Yeah, of course. But there's no value in it because nobody watches it. But that's a problem the team's got to solve, right? Riot guarantees LCS minimum contracts for people that played the following year when they win the LCS Summer Finals. This demand I just don't understand. It's why. Like, it kind of goes. Well, let's do the next one. So, institute a 3-5 roster continuity rule to provide players on released NA rosters first priority in maintaining their slots in upcoming NACL seasons if a majority continue to compete together. This is a really weird one along with this because these two seem counterintuitive to the first one. So here, the PA is asking Riot to institute a relegation system which basically makes stuff really competitive, right? Because you have a potential to drop out of the league if you play poorly. But then they're asking for an institution of a 3-5 roster where players that win can like have to stay together, as well as like guaranteed contracts. You either want your competition or you don't. And I don't understand like kind of like what they're doing here. So a lot of people have criticized the PA for these asks, but and I obviously I was just kind of like a little bit harsh on them, but I think the PA is mostly doing the right thing. And I think there's a couple of reasons to understand why they're angry. So we've talked about, we're going to talk about Academy in this section and kind of what's going on there. There isn't a lot of talent that is coming up through the funnel that's supposed to come up through it. So I think a lot of talent is sort of stuck in the Academy League, and they aren't, like, the whole system is broken. So a good example of this is like the C9 Academy team, C9A, they won last split, but none of them went to the LCS. Right? And now all of their jobs are gone. It didn't matter at all that they won the last split. Like, so I don't understand like why the Academy is like a thing when ideally it should be a very hungry place where there's a lot of competition to try to get into the LCS. but in reality, it is just sort of a graveyard for either previous pro players or people that are kind of like friends of friends. So let's talk about why the PA is angry, though. I think a lot of people think, well, the PA is angry because they disbanded Academy, but I think that the PA is really angry for 3 reasons, and I'll list them there here. So number 1 is that the PA wasn't really brought into the discussion at any point, according to Philip Aram. They want to be included in discussions and make sure that players are heard and taken care of. And also they agree that the current Academy system isn't working, but they want to find a solution. So they just want to be a part of the conversation. Their argument, I think, is that dropping the Academy and doing just nothing else is just not the move. Like, they're saying, look, like, your answer of we're dropping Academy completely and we're just not doing anything about this, like, that's unacceptable. Now, notably also, this is a claim by the PA that Riot has lied directly to them, and basically said, we are going to keep the North American Challenger League. We're going to keep the Academy League. Don't worry about it. There's no chance that we get rid of that. And the PA is claiming that they understood this even as soon as a month ago. And Riot just deliberately lied and said, just kidding, we're actually going to dismantle those teams. So we can't know if that's true, but I kind of believe it. I really do believe the PA on this. I don't think the PA was properly communicated with, and I think that is the biggest mistake of Riot here, for sure. Now let's go into some of the bigger kind of meta issues, and that's sort of the Academy section. I guess the TLDR there is like, I just don't think the Academy was a good answer, but I also kind of agree with the PA that like the answer wasn't just to obliterate the entire system, give carte blanche to the teams, and then the teams just drop everybody, because of course they will. That like, and we're gonna get into the teams. Don't worry. I have a section coming up here, which is kind of just like who's most at fault, and I think it's the most important section of this video. But we need to talk first about I think a really important issue, which is like, does Riot need the LCS? And that's the next section. So I'm going to tell you my opinion on the LCS just with a lot of context from being in esports since 2015. I think that the LCS was never about competition. This might be kind of like a hot take, but like, it's coming from a team owner, so we'll see. Like, the LCS was never about competition. It was about marketing for Riot Games. And Riot used it as a line item to market the game, and that works to some extent, but it's to sell skins, it's to kind of drive hype in the game. I don't think that the competition... I think the competition in like 2015 to 2017, where the heat was like really there, that was like not as a result of Riot. It was just sort of existing outside of Riot, if that makes sense. Like it happened just because like people like really wanted it to happen. People were really passionate about it. It didn't happen because like Riot was like driving the spirit of competition, though they were doing better on narrative. So I would say that like Riot uses the LCS as a marketing arm, and the real truth is that they don't need the LCS because the game. There's a couple of reasons for this, and let's just go through them. So like I think number 1 is that they've got franchise money, so they've already collected all the money from the teams, and they just have that money. But I think number 2 is that they have tons of exposure in other regions, and North America is failing. And I think when I say, does Riot need the LCS, I really should update this to, does Riot need the North American LCS? Because there's other regions like China that are doing unbelievably well, but they have tons of exposure in other regions. They have tons of sales in other regions, tons of growth in other regions. NA is just failing. They're not only failing to put up results, as in like win internationally, they're also failing just in general to like in viewership. Like their viewership is dropping, interest is dropping, teams are getting lazier. We're gonna get into like why it's such a shit show, but yeah, this kind of leads to the next section, which is like the product is unprofitable, viewership is declining, players are massively overpaid. So Riot is putting 30 million. If we assume that 3 million number times 10, they're putting 30 million into a year with teams that just have no international results while China grows and North America declines. And you can kind of see like, after 10 years, which is how long the league's like been around thereabouts, right? The league is not generating profit, and it's still not getting ROI, which is return on investment for Riot. So at some point, Riot just kind of has to say, look, we have given you teams so much money and so much support. You guys can't make it happen. We can't make it happen. Nobody can make it happen. Like, when are we just going to kind of call it good on this thing? And I think this entire situation of this walkout and is just sort of accelerating these problems. That the NALCS fundamentally just isn't a good product. It's not a good product to sponsor most of the time. There are some exceptions to this. Like I was really impressed with like the Grubhub sponsorship, for example. And there are situations where I would take some of my brand's money. For people that don't know, I run an agency, brand agency, where we take brand budgets and do advertising. I think there are some situations where I'd advertise with Riot. But for the most part, like advertising with the teams directly is just a total money vampire. Like it's just gonna completely evaporate and not get any kind of conversion or results, especially for what they charge. I would definitely sponsor at a league level higher than I would, like at an instant more than I would for at a team level. But even still, I just don't think that a lot of the ROI is there for most brands. And even if it was, for Riot to fill all those sponsorship slots at a league level and make this league profitable with how much they're giving out, it just doesn't seem realistic. So I don't think Riot needs the LCS, and I think that's going to become painfully clear as these negotiations go on. And that brings us to the next question, which is, does Riot need the players? So I don't know the answer to this question. I think the players right now are the biggest problem with players right now is that they are insanely, and I just think like irreparably overpaid. There is so, like, it is crazy to me that there are 2 and 3 year contracts on the LCS for single players right now that cost upwards of $3 to $4 million, when a single sponsor won't even pay a team $200,000 to $300,000 a year for the entire team to represent their product. Like, that fundamentally represents a broken ecosystem to a degree that I can't even explain to you. I've tried to explain it, like covering it in other videos that are an hour long about how broken esports is. But like, players just shouldn't be paid that highly. And I'm sorry if that's like a hot take. Like, I want these people to be compensated, obviously. Like, but there needs to be stability in the ecosystem. And I think teams have been locked into a war of bidding each other up on phantom capital, right? On venture capital, money that has been invested in them on the belief that this league was going to make money. The teams took that and bid these players up. Oh, I'll take them for $500K. No, I'll take them for $1 million. I'll take them for $1.5 million, right? And they had these big organizations come in around like 2017 to 2018 that were funded and got like $20 million. Decided to throw that all in 2 years into player salaries, just the dumbest thing. And I think that, you know, maybe it's controversial, but I just don't think that the ROI is there. Like, I just don't think these guys should be making millions of dollars a year playing League of Legends. Now, I think that's a possibility if the sponsors are there, if the ecosystem is right, if like sports can do, right? Like, it makes sense, but they're overpaid. So like, it just doesn't make any sense. I can't figure out if Riot needs the players. What's going to happen here is the players had to do something, because they would lose their voice if they didn't at this point, right? Like, basically Riot said, we're going to drop effectively half of the total player pool that's available for the LCS by dropping the Challenger League and the Academy League, and you just have to deal with it. Like, oh, okay, whoa, we got to do something, right? So they had to do something here, and they were right to do something. But I'm not really sure. I can't figure out like what's going to happen. Now Riot is obviously talking to the PA and trying to prevent this walkout, and there's some negotiation going. I think that ultimately we're going to see, you know, 2 outcomes. Like, either like Riot is now saying like the show's going to go on, and they're going to find somebody to play. They basically lifted the requirements for people to play in the LCS. So I mean, it's going to be like my grandma or like my dog playing or something, but the show's going to go on. And every week that it does, there's going to be competitive integrity that gets lost because nobody's taking this seriously. These games count, but these players are like streamers or just like not real competitors or whatever. Or maybe like it's fine and Riot really doesn't need them. They just bring in a bunch of like streamers and the competition keeps going. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I think it's more likely that the competitive integrity is going to erode. But yeah, I think we need to really get into the next section, which is really who's at fault here. And that's like the most important part of this video. So before that, it's 24:55. You are the secret call out. You're listening to a Devin Nash video, so we do very long, total, in-depth explanations, and my goal is to kind of get you to completely understand this issue, and hopefully I've done enough work on that. My name is Devin Nash. Like I mentioned, I was formerly CEO of Counterlogic Gaming. I currently run a company called Novo, which is a brand agency. So if you're a brand, you want to talk to us about advertising, we do custom advertisements with influencer marketing. Love to talk to you. Also, I run a Patreon. That's patreon.com/Devin Nash. It is an insanely valuable platform. For $5, you get over 90 videos about business, marketing, just kind of whatever I want to talk about. I talk about a lot of like internal issues about how to run a business, stuff like that. If that is up your alley, patreon.com/Devin Nash is where you want to go. And also, please join our Discord, discord.gg/Devin, which is a central hub for talking about like marketing issues and stuff going on in esports and gaming, all kinds of stuff like that. So that's my call to action. Please post in the comments that 2450 if you are still here. And thank you very much. I just love to hear from people that post the comment like, oh, I'm still here, like 2454. Let's go. Thanks, everybody. Let's go into what I call the list of dumb. Who is most at fault? Well, the answer is freaking everyone, but I think it's kind of like a cascading thing. I think some people are less at fault than others. The number one people that I will put at fault, it's teams. It's teams 100%. Oh my God. You see a lot of argument in this discussion. Some people are siding with teams. Some people are siding with Riot. Some people are siding with the players. The teams are actually avoiding most of the flack of this walkout issue. But they are literally totally responsible for it. They are the ones that asked Riot in the first place, begged Riot is a better way to say it, to remove this requirement. And Riot capitulated to them, which is somewhat their responsibility to do because it's a franchise league. The team said, yo, this is too expensive. We can't handle it. We don't want to pay for this. Let us drop them. Riot says, okay, if you want to, you can. Riot didn't say, okay, all y'all got to drop them. That's it. We're done with the league. No, it was the teams that decided we are going to drop 7 out of the 10 of the teams decided we are going to drop all of our academy players. We're going to fire all those people overnight. We're going to let them go. That was the team's decision. It's really important to understand that, okay? But I would say I'm going to go hard, man. I'm ready. The kids' gloves are off, okay? The teams did way worse than that, okay? They mismanaged their resources and their money given to them by Riot. They had no incentive to actually make Academy a true competitive environment because of franchising, which is to some extent Riot's fault also, but the teams wanted this. They took on huge VC money, lied to investors, most of them, about the ROI they knew wasn't there, and then finally screwed everything up. Now, you might say, well, Devin, you're a team owner, and you also took on VC money. Did you not do the same thing? And I would say to you, I left CLG in solidarity because I did not really want to go this route. I saw the writing on the wall, and I said, and as I said in my departure, I said, look, this company is going to continue under Madison Square Garden, but not with me. I'm done. That's it. And I left a lot of money on the table for that to do that. A lot more money than people think. And I made that decision because I saw the writing on the wall. I didn't want to be a part of a bloated VC esports industry. And hey, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. So great. All right. But the teams messed up. The teams are mismanaging their resources enormously. I cannot express enough. It's like, in what other business would you be given $1.5 to $3 million a year? Just a person just comes in from the sky and gives you $3 million, and you still manage to screw it up so bad that you can't be profitable. Like, man, these teams have just never been able, even from when I was running them, the teams just can't agree on anything. They fight like cats and dogs. They blow each other up, inflating salaries, importing people, paying millions of dollars. It's the team's fault. Like, fundamentally, it's the team's fault. The teams are the ones that decided to do this. The teams are ultimately what caused the walkout. Now the teams are pressuring players and saying, you guys have got to play because Riot is basically contractually forcing them to do to clean up the mess that they made. Okay, so teams are number one. But they're not the only people. It's also sticky keys. I'm too excited. I'm pressing shift too many times. It's also Riot. Okay? Riot lied to the PA. I do believe they did this. I'm just going to piss off. It's like a similar to, I'm pissing off every single potential person in this video. Okay? And they franchised in the first place. Reduced viewership. And I think they did this through something that I'm going to say is they killed storylines. So what do I mean by this? So Riot used to invest a lot of creative energy into producing content that created rivalries. So like in 2015, I think one of the reasons why the Madison Square Garden event of CLG versus TSM was so successful is that there was just this storyline being created for a long period of time over how fundamental that rivalry was. And it really is fundamental. Like, I still to this day hate TSM, and it's a real thing. And I still respect some of the people on there, like notably like Bjergsen or Lena or some of the people that like really built the organization from the ground up. But I had a real rivalry with that team, and we all did on CLG, and probably vice versa. Riot, I just failed to continue those storylines. Like over the last like 2 or 3 years, like no one cares. Like no one cares about like whatever team versus whatever team. Like they didn't create content that sort of like forwarded that narrative for most people. I mean, there are still like a lot of people that watch the league, and some that would argue that it's the best it's ever been, but the viewership doesn't agree with you. Like the viewership's been declining 10% per year, and was artificially boosted via COVID, similar to like Twitch's numbers. I don't think there's a good argument you could say that like Riot has been able to consistently keep the North American LCS interesting, which is to some extent their job, right? Like they like, at least if you're going to be owning the whole thing because you have the IP, then you've got to like cut teams in on the storylines, and also there was so much more that Riot could have done to support the league, just like from a content perspective. So a lot of people are going to say, well, maybe Riot should have done like revenue share, or should have like given the teams like more money. Man, the teams have enough money. Like if you, I'm sorry, like if you can't, if you're getting $3 million, you know what they do with it? You know what they do with Riot's money? They go expand into other games. And Riot knows this. Like it's like that's like what's so messed up, right? The teams go invest in other games to diversify themselves and return more value to their investors. They literally take Riot's money, and instead of investing Riot's money into their own league, they go like expand into CS:GO or expand into like, well, hopefully Valorant's fine, but like expand into like other games that just are not published by Riot. So like Riot's like, well, why the hell should we like everyone's like, well, you should do like more skin shares, or like even when I was a team owner, of course I was like begging for this all the time. Sell skins or sell CLG merch or whatever. Why? Like, we give you enough money. Like, you can't make it happen. So, like, at what point is enough? You know? Number 3 is the PA. The PA is, like, and now, like, in terms of, like, people at fault, I like teams, like, way up here, Riot's, like, significantly down here. Then, like, way down here is, like, PA. Like, PA, I don't think is doing that much just wrong. But I do think that there's a couple of problems. That one is, like, the demands are pretty unreasonable. I think they're kind of intended to be. I also don't understand, like, why come to the table where your primary request is, like, change franchising, and you know that you can't do that. Like, they'll never do this. So, like it exists to give investor security, like we talked about before. So I just think that the PA coming in now feels like sort of a last-ditch effort to represent the players, and it's good that they did, but it's like, where were you when the academy was so broken the past like several years, and you just kind of been sitting around, and I think there's a lot more action that could have been taken. I'll say that. So the last group of people I have to piss off is all the players. I would say that the players' real problem is a problem of hubris and maybe laziness. Oh, that's my productivity app. So I just don't think that the players over time have like built their brands or truly fostered like a competitive atmosphere for the most part. There are obviously players who are notable exceptions to this, and I can't even make exceptions for all of them, many of whom are I think, my personal friends. And so I don't want to like say every player was like responsible for this. And nor do I even want to say, and I just like the fault of the players is like the fault of like, there's a car crash happening and everybody stands around and doesn't, and like nobody actually like goes in and checks if anybody's okay. They're just all like, hey, somebody else will do it. This is the cop's job. This is whatever. So like, I don't like really like those people are not like implicated. Like you didn't cause the accident. You're not responsible for it, but you are reaping, like make no mistake, like the people that are making out like bandits here are the players and Riot. Riot's like obviously collecting a lot of money on the top, but the players are making a ridiculous amount of money in the LCS as pros. Not a single team is profitable. Now a lot of their owners are taking a lot of the money, and those people are individually rich. But the people making money here is Riot, and then the players, like for the most part in the LCS, a lot of them are overpaid. And I think that created a sort of lazy atmosphere combined with like no relegation, where just players just kind of pushed for more money, like talked about, yeah, we'd love to get paid more, but we're just going to kind of chill, play the game. And look, I'm not saying it's easy. A player's life is really hard. They scrim all the time. They it's a highly stressful thing. Like to be expected to build their brands at the same time and be responsible for that is pretty unreasonable, like given like their schedule. But man, like you're the only person that can. Like your team's not going to do it for you, right? Like the teams are all out for themselves. They don't care about you, most of them. So like as a player, your only responsibility is like the people like one of the reasons I respect Doublelift is because like he really understood this early, right? Like Doublelift understood that if I build my Twitter following, if I build like my presence as a person here, my negotiating power at the table of a team or even to Riot is like way greater. And like yes, it's hard. Yes, like I'm scrimming every day. Like how can I be expected to do all this stuff? Like that's like the market doesn't care, bro. Like he understood, as much as we've had our differences, he understood that like he had to build his brand to a point where his negotiation power and his leverage was incredible, and that carried his career, right? It gave him an enormous amount of leverage against us as CLG, and like I use that word against, but I think it's really appropriate, where people think that like players and teams are this synonymous, like, oh, like the team loves you, and some of the teams in the LCS, they do this whole marketing song and dance of like, oh, we love you, like we really want to take care of you, and like yeah, of course, like some of that is true, but really it's like it's a fundamental like when the negotiations come out, when the contracts come out, it is a negotiation of who has more leverage. And if you don't have a brand, you don't have like anything to offer, then you're just going to get offered like bare minimum, and the teams are going to do whatever they can to like leverage that on you. So people like Doublelift, Bjergsen, right, like understood that, and like they built bigger brands so they could leverage those, and they made millions of dollars because of it, millions more dollars than other players did. So not all players are like this, but many players have just sort of resigned to like, okay, I'm going to do my scrims, I'm going to kind of show up, I'm going to punch in, and then I'm going to peace out. And like versus like many of those other people, like Afromoo, or like so all the like names that you've heard, they were building their brands. They were streaming after scrims. They were like working really, really hard to like build their empires. So I think that players, if there's anything you could like attribute to them, and again, it's a very small percentage compared to the teams and to Riot, it's just the laziness. And not all of them, even still. But really, it's the teams. I also want to say one more thing on the players, and that's that players did a historic and great job standing up for something. Where players have been criticized for many of the things that I just criticized them for, sometimes appropriately, sometimes not. But one thing they just did was like they basically unanimously said, we're not okay with this. We feel like a lot of our friends and a lot of people were put out of jobs, and we're not okay. Like we're actually going to do this walkout, and like, damn, like let's go. I'm really proud of the people. I know that probably Darshan had an enormous amount of influence on that, as well as a lot of the players in the PA, as well as Philip Aram. Like good job. You guys stood up for something you believe in, regardless of what I think. You did something that is meaningful to you, and you took action, and it is going to make ripples across all of esports. So it did show that players can get together and do anything, and like do something, and that's really, really great. They stood for something they believe in. I just think that's really powerful. We have, to some extent, publishers like Riot have banked on the fact that teams and players can't do this. That they essentially just can't stand together. And so like Riot can always like go in and like pick and choose one or two or three teams and just say, okay, well, we're going to go after you guys. And then those teams sort of break off, and like nobody kind of stays united. And then the whole like thing collapses, right? But in this case, like the players like really stood together and did something, and now Riot is like kind of forced to the table. That's a really powerful thing. So I really like that. But I do hold the I'm so disappointed in the teams I can't express it to you. Like, the mismanagement of funds, like not even being able to make their businesses profitable. Like, look, they fought so much like cats and dogs that they artificially raised salaries because they couldn't like meet behind closed doors and say like, maybe we know we're paying players like 900, 1,000%, 2,000% more than they're worth based on our sponsorships. Like, they could have just communicated. They could have like worked with Riot, and they could have like put those salaries under control and not putting us to the situation. Like team. I understand that like Riot owns the IP and that they own the league, but they it's like Riot has to like, you can't like, if your kid goes out and you give them $30 and they go buy a bunch of junk food or drugs, okay, you can like tell your kid like, hey, don't do that. But if he keeps doing it, like at some point you have to like stop giving them money or like get them help, like whatever. But you can't like just like live that person's life. Like a lot of people, they want to like Riot should just run all this stuff. Riot should just run. No, like look, Riot's got to give some agency to teams, and at some point teams got to be responsible for their P&Ls. They got to be responsible for like what they're doing, and they're not responsible. They're just not universally. Like, there are some teams that are better than others, but man, I'm just so disappointed with the state of teams in 2023. God, it's pathetic. Like they can't do anything. They can't agree on anything. They can't even make companies profitable. Like with millions of dollars being given to them, literally. Just like coming from the perspective of like actually having to run a business now, where I have like a P&L where like my OpEx, my operating expenses, like if I run out of money, I'm out of money. There's nobody to save me. There's nobody to like come in and like angel me, like what happened with the LCS this year, where like all the NA teams got advances. And furthermore, like on top of all that shit, they're not putting up results. Like, you're not even winning internationally. You're not even winning like against like Asian teams and like other foreign teams. You can't even do that. So like, what are you good for? Like why should Riot keep you in the LCS? Why should Riot keep the NALCS at all? Just release another Star Guardian skin and make the money back that you pay out to the teams for basically nothing. That's my opinion. Like, I think the teams are like just like freaking ridiculous. Like, it's just so crazy that we're propping up these literally failing organizations. It's pathetic. So like, anyway, like the teams like are the people to blame here, right? Like, they're like mysteriously staying silent on this whole issue, and of course, because like they know that like they're responsible for this whole walkout. They're the ones that dropped all these players, and not enough people are talking about that. Man, yeah, it's sad. It's totally sad. So I said the pro players did a great job standing for something. I mean, so like, what's gonna happen? Like, what's basically the future here? Kind of closing this out. I don't know. I really don't. Like, I have no idea if the academy. No, I have a little bit more to say about the teams, actually. Like, even worse now that like basically every time the TSM is like exiting now, reportedly like next year. All the teams are like you leave as soon as like you can, and the going gets tough after taking like millions of dollars of VC money and failing with it. All right. Nobody stood by their values, man. Like it pisses me off so much, right? Like, every single team owner, the year that I left esports, every team owner saw the writing on the wall for sure. Like, they knew that they couldn't get the returns from their investors. Yet I'm pretty sure I was the only one to leave at the height because I just didn't like ethically agree with it. Like, I really didn't. Like, I like, and people are gonna be like, oh, like Devin's like lying, or Devin says no. Like I had an offer on the table from not only my own team, but multiple teams, like to be a high level executive in that organization. I turned that down. I turned down all contracts. I said, this is just not the future of esports. I don't want to be a part of this. And I left millions of dollars on the table. And I'm not saying everybody should do that or whatever, but at the very least, like, don't go forward and like lie to everybody and mismanage all of your resources and then be like, oh, now we're out because the going got tough. Like, it's so sad what esports has become. Like, the people that made this what it was and made it like a competitive and challenging thing and were passionate about it is just like dead to like soulless VCs that like hoped that they were going to get a 10x ROI on what they viewed as a tech play in a burgeoning market. It ended up just being kind of like a sad phantom of what it should have been. Okay, now I'm done with teams, I promise. Sorry. So what's the future? I think, well, obviously there's a couple of possibilities. Riot could capitulate in some way. We covered in the list of demands how there isn't really a lot of ways that happens, just because like the PA's demands right now are like not really realistic. Or I think that more likely there's probably going to be what I would call a hard reset of North America, which kind of means that like maybe these franchise teams like probably finally like sort of just like start collapsing because of this, and like over the next year we see a lot of them exit or kind of get like absorbed like CLG did. The failure just kind of like compounds on each other, and like North America kind of just like loses a lot of its players that sort of walked out or are no longer kind of part of it. The CL actually, like the Challenger League actually does die, the Academy does die, and that's it. It's just like kind of new players kind of come in, new talent kind of comes in at more reasonable salaries, and the LCS kind of continues on if Riot wants to continue it, but at like much more reasonable rates, and sort of the whole thing kind of does what I predicted it would do some years ago in my like bubble esports videos, where it just sort of falls back to normal. It just sort of normalizes, and people are getting paid reasonable salaries. Teams are kind of making money because like they're paying reasonable salaries, their expenses aren't too high, and yet they are collecting sponsorship money that is reasonable for them. The viewership is stagnant, but like maybe kind of declining a little bit or growing, and maybe something will hit where people get really interested. There might be a League of Legends 2, or there might be a big update, and it kind of changes things. As for the Academy League, unfortunately, I kind of think overall that it probably is a good thing that it's gone. I think at this point it was very stagnant. I agree with a lot of the people that have commented on that. I don't think the solution, to the PA's note, I don't think the solution was to drop it outright, and I think the way Riot did this was unfortunate, and the way the teams did it especially was really unfortunate. I think that recruitment should probably happen from Collegiate. I think Collegiate is awesome, and that if I were going to take that $300K that the PA wanted for the $3 million or whatever, I would love to throw that into colleges and the people that are competing there that are really hungry, that would love to be a pro, that are literally planning their career, versus like just giving it back to players that are just going to kind of sit on that salary because they can't figure out what else to do with their life. Which again is not everybody. There's some hungry people in North American Academy League. You know who you are, but like there's other people that have sat there for a long time. I would much rather support amateur and collegiate for potential player talent and people upcoming in North America. I think that collegiate is basically ignored in large part, and like it's really a fascinating scene with a lot of people working really hard. And that's probably where we should put the money. But the NACL probably in its current, like one thing I was saying, right, is like, let's say that like Riot comes back and is like, hey, just kidding, now you got to field an NACL team. Like, are all those people going to get their jobs back? Well, probably not, right? Like the teams let them go. They've canceled their employment. I don't think all those people are going to get their jobs back, and just like the whole thing is just going to come back. I think like a lot of that damage is done. All right, have we covered everything? Probably not. This is like a huge issue. So I've done the best I can with what I have. I've probably managed to simultaneously piss off every single group of people that is involved in this, but I think there's a lot of fault to be pushed around. And I'm perfectly happy with people criticizing me for some of the same things that I criticize the teams for, which I was absolutely a part of. It's easy for me to look back on hindsight, running some big agency and being like, yeah, you guys are messing up. I also understand what it's like to be on the ground floor of that battlefield and the perspective. And I get it too, that it's like, it can be really hard to do. So I'm open to any criticism or anything about that too. I wasn't perfect through this whole process by any means. But damn, it is just really unfortunate because like for the people that really did get into esports, you know, when George and I like really started building CLG, we were really legitimately passionate about the competition. Like none of the conversations that we had were like, we're gonna make so many millions of dollars. We're gonna like, it was like really about like, damn, we really want to beat TSM. Like we really want to 5-0 these guys. We really want to like destroy these teams. How do we get better? How do we get better? How do we get better? Just constantly shedding our skin and being like, how do we get better? How do we get more competitive? How do we enable these players to be better and better and better? And that felt really good. The reason that I left esports is because I literally saw that die in real time when all the franchising came in and all the VCs came in. It was nothing about that. Every conversation I had was phone calls like, how do we get more sales? How do we get more sponsors? How do we sell more tickets? How do we get more people viewing this? How do we get more merch drops? How do we make more off of those merch? And I'm like, God, I'm exhausted. Like, man, like none of the reason, like I might as well go to the agency world, which is why I did that, right? Like if I'm gonna go play in like the merch like advertising world, I'll just do an agency. I'm not gonna like hide it as an esports team, which is really what esports teams are. They're just agencies, right? Like I'm gonna go just do the real thing because the soul of esports is that competition and passion that we had. And like if you remember, there's gonna be some people, there's gonna be one of you that remembers this, right? Where like you're at like PAX West in Seattle and you are like you can go over and you can watch the LCS. That feeling of that competition there, in my opinion, hasn't existed in years. And I just think it's the fault of like a lot of the reasons why we've talked about in this video, but just is more than anything else is disappointing. Just disappointing to me that it's come to this as a result of just like hype. Like let's throw our money in, let's make a ton of money. Like it's all about the money. This sucks, right? That's what it drove me back to like FGC and places where like this doesn't exist as much, where which has its own problems, but at least they have a competitive spirit. So I hope this is kind of the beginning of a reset to maybe that competitive spirit coming back in some way. If nothing else, just because the industry normalizes, we just get out of these like crazy VC deals where like everyone's expecting millions of dollars of return, and it actually like all that kind of illusion drops, and then it's like, hey, like maybe it's just about the competition, and it's about the game. How about that?